Hey guys, let me just make sure you guys can hear me. Looks like it's good on my end. Oh shit, I can hear myself on. Okay. How you guys doing? It's been a while. Sounds good, Rainbow. Thanks. I'm going to apologize right off the bat about the mic. If I tap on the table or use my mouse and whatnot. Yeah, I know. I get it. You can hear it. I'll try to put it on a buffer right now, but I don't know. That's kind of really all I can do, and I'm sorry about that noise. But thanks, Jay. Yeah, have new graphics for every day stream. I don't want to chit chat too much about some bullshit in the beginning of the stream because I want to keep every day to what it's supposed to be. So today is what, Sunday? Yes, Sunday. So I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong. And Sunday I want to have I want to do etiquette, which I think is super important because we have been seeing, this whole thing online. We can have a discussion. If you guys want to send me anything about this discussion a little bit more involving simps. You can send me some stuff. Tomorrow is going to be a general chat, and we can chit chat about all the current events and bullshit and Twitter and all that stuff. So okay, you guys are distracting me. I gotta stop looking at the comments. But yeah, so we can go deeper into this whole simp versus chivalry conversation tomorrow. But I do think that there is a distinction, and it is important to understand concepts of etiquette. And so I wanted to share that. I think both the left and right could benefit from it. And it just so happens that my favorite, I guess, person, the leading author on etiquette, American author on etiquette, is Emily Post, and she has a book that was published in 1922. Okay, you guys are complaining about the thing. I don't know. I mean, make the screen big. It's big on my screen. I thought Jack, I showed you all of my graphics yesterday, and you could have said something then. But anyway, all of the links to Streamlab and everything will be in the description. Let me put it in there now, I suppose. God, it's gonna take forever to get anything done. Let me just do something real quick. Hold on. Oh, fuck, no, not that. Color source. Add a little bit of white. We'll do a little white action here. This is what we'll do. Give me a second, guys. Y'all complaining about shit. All right, there. Happy? So I will get to, Emily Post is the leading author on etiquette, American author, and her book was published in 1922. Which means it is on this website, Gutenberg.org, from the Gutenberg Press. It's in the link is in the description. There's a ton of really awesome books on there, a lot of free downloads, a lot of things that are copyright free because it's just really old. And so super thrilled because I have hard copies of this book. It's an extremely thick book, and I think there's some really important things in there that we should go over and contemplate in regard to all of these social things between men and women and social cohesion. So let's see what we have with etiquette. Shall we? All right, hold on. Split screen. So this is the link that is in the description, and it is to the Gutenberg.org etiquette by Emily Post. And there's the different kinds of books, how you want to view it. I think I do have it in another form, which I might want to use that one. Let me get it real quick. Just hang on a second. Sorry. I tried to be prepared. I really did. And now I am digging around like a retard. Streams. Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. Here we go. Etiquette. Alright, how do I show you this book? Otherwise, it's gonna have to be... There we go. Why is it so tiny like that? I don't like that. That'll do. That'll do. This is gonna be one of those things like the Skype. Remember when it kept like going away if I minimized it? Okay, so let's take a look at Emily Post's etiquette book. Etiquette in society, in business, in politics. Love it. And at home. Love it by Emily Post. 1922. So you have to remember when we go through some of these chapters that this was published in 1922 because there are different social norms and things. And so I just want to show this to you guys as just like, I think most of the stuff in there is like pretty on point and pretty good, you know, but take it for what it is for that time. A lot of times when they reference things like handwritten notes and letters, we don't really do that a lot nowadays, but we do have emails and text messages and phone calls and stuff like that. So a lot of times written letters and stuff do make sense as far as like texting and stuff goes. So it's still worthwhile to like make note of and maybe like apply it in your life. Both left and right could use it. I think it's fabulous. So yeah, we're gonna go through pretty much, I think, the introduction and maybe part of this What is Best Society today. There's a lot of information to go through, and I considered not going through the introduction, but it is actually something that I've done a video before on. So if you go through my etiquette videos before, and I did like, you know, edit it with like pictures and put stuff in there, you know, check it out. But it's going to be kind of similar to what we're doing now. I'm going to just read you guys some things here and there. And maybe we can have a discussion about stuff at the end of the little reading segment and talk about all of these things. And I was going to skip this since I already did a video reading the introduction, which I think is really interesting. I realized that like people are not going to go back and watch my video, and we may as well go through it on the stream because the stuff is just like really interesting and really cool. And before we do that, let me double check and see how you guys are doing. Oh, hey, Kyle Ritter's in here. How you doing? How you doing? Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been clowning around. Oh, we got a lot of people in chat. Oh, it's so great to see everyone. Cool. What was I going to say? Sorry, guys. Okay. I'm not really an orator. So excuse me about having to read this, but it's interesting, I promise. This first part trips me up a bit. And again, remember this was from 1922, so the way that they wrote things and spoke is pretty posh, I would say, but it's interesting. I'm going to try to understand this. Help me out if I'm getting something wrong. Many who scoff at a book of etiquette would be shocked to hear the least expression of levity touching the Ten Commandments. I don't know if they're taking a dig at the Ten Commandments or not. Tried to get the lowdown if she was like super liberal or what at the time. She was definitely like a socialite, New Yorker, whatever, like got divorced and it was super taboo, like 1800s, like early 1900s, like, but I don't know, to be fair, her husband was kind of like a drunk retard, and I don't know, but the book does, since it's just so old, come across conservative, just because like things are so far liberal that it's like a liberal in like her time, seems super conservative to us today. So I don't know. But the Ten Commandments do not always prevent such virtuous scoffers from dealings with their neighbor, of which no gentleman could be capable and retain his calm to the title. Though it may require ingenuity to reconcile their actions with the Decalogue, the ingenuity is always forthcoming. There is no intention in this remark to intimate that there is any higher rule of life than the Ten Commandments. So again, I think maybe it was a little bit of a dig at the Ten Commandments, but then saying like, no, we're not like really trying to like insult the Ten Commandments, that there's anything higher than the Ten Commandments. Only it is illuminating as showing the relationship between manners and morals. And I think that's a really important distinction, like they say, which is too often overlooked. By the way, this is by Richard Duffy, the introduction. Don't exactly know what his deal is, but this intro is really, really good. So it is kind of like understanding etiquette. And they'll go on to explain the distinction, but there is a link between morality. You know, it's like that's why chivalry, or like the way you interact with children or old people or women and the people around you, and showing being courteous or whatever, and not being a pushover. It's not about being a pushover at all. That's not what a gentleman is. But they are magnanimous and show morality. So I think that's really important that they make that distinction. The polished gentleman of sentimental fiction has so long served as the type of smooth and conscienceless depravity that urbanity of demeanor inspires distrust in ruder minds. On the other hand, the blunt, unpolished hero of melodrama and romantic fiction has lifted brusqueness and pushfulness to a pedestal not wholly merited. So I don't know. I think that they're talking about the cities and being pushful and all that stuff, being like brisk and whatever, being put on a pedestal, and it's not really wholly merited. Consequently, the kinship between conduct that keeps us within the law and the conduct that makes civilized life worthy to be called such deserves to be noted with emphasis. Love it. The Chinese sage Confucius could not tolerate the suggestion that virtue is in itself enough without politeness, for he viewed them as inseparable and saw courtesies as coming from the heart, maintaining that when they are practiced with all the heart, a moral elevation ensues. And that is really, really beautiful. And you know what? Okay, so speaking of China and Chinese, whenever I see Confucius and stuff like that, I studied abroad in China in 2006, and I did study a little bit of Confucius and all sorts of different interesting cultural things about China, but I noticed it was all pre-communism China, and it's just like a shame because they do have some great culture and stuff like that, and like Confucius, but they don't really study that, and the state doesn't really have them pay attention to any of the stuff that's actually good, some of their culture. But yeah, anyway, let's see what he says. Again, he saw courtesies as coming from the heart, maintaining that when they are practiced with all the heart, a moral elevation ensues. And that's exactly the thing about etiquette that people get wrong. When I dated a leftist who strongly was against etiquette because he thought it was snobbishness of people, looking down at others and acting like they know how to have this like secret code of conduct, and that makes them more superior to those that don't know that code. And that's not what it's about at all. When it's practiced with all the heart, you're opening the door for someone, or doing something with courteous to others through your heart. That's what makes it the moral elevation ensues, and that's the connection with etiquette and morality. And I think that that's important for us to remember, especially when it's, we've been so angry with feminists and started treating them the way that they wanted to be treated as an equal. There's a lot going on online, and I think it's important to maybe remember to get back to this, because there's certainly women that want to get back to this kind of dynamic with each other, and I think it's really nice. And it is all about perfecting and working on yourself, not necessarily pointing fingers at others and just being rude to others all the time. Sure, there's a place for trolling every once in a while, but like ultimately coming from a place of like love. I don't want to be like put the love hate spectrum on there, but yeah, coming with, your whole heart. That's how you do it. When you say thank you or hello to someone or whatever, do it with the heart, and I think that's really important. Anyway, people who ridicule etiquette as a mass of trivial and arbitrary conventions, extremely troublesome to those who practice them, and insupportable to everybody else, seem to forget the long, slow progress of social intercourse and the upward climb of man from the primeval state. Conventions were established from the first to regulate the rights of the individual and the tribe. They were and are the rules of the game of life and must be followed if we would play the game. Ages before man felt the need of indigestion remedies, he ate his food solitary and furtive in some corner, hoping he would not be espied by any stronger and hungrier fellow. It was a long, long time before the habit of eating in common was acquired, and it was obvious that the practice could not have been taken up with safety until the individual of the race knew enough about one another and about the food resources to be sure that there was sufficient food for all. When eating in common became in vogue, table manners made their appearance, and they have been waging an uphill struggle ever since. The custom of raising the hat when meeting an acquaintance derives from the old rule that friendly knights, in accosting each other, should raise the visor for mutual recognition in amity. In the knightly years, it must be remembered, it was important to know whether one was meeting a friend or a foe. Meeting a foe meant fighting on the spot. Thus, it is evident that the conventions of courtesy not only tend to make the wheels of life run more smoothly, but also act as a safeguard in human relationship. Imagine the Paris Peace Conference or any of the later conferences in Europe without the protective armor of diplomatic etiquette. Nevertheless, to some, the very word etiquette is an irritant. It implies a great pother about trifles. These, no, not trifles, the dessert, but trifles are little things. It's like, I don't know, let's look up the definition. It's not the dessert. Okay, let me just get this definition. Trifle. No, not the dessert. A thing of little value or importance. Talk or act frivolously. Yeah, so it's just like little things, little inconveniences and whatnot. Oh shit. I gotta get back to the book. Hold on a second. Okay. Little trifles. Trifles are unimportant, it is true, but then life is made up of trifles. To those who dislike the word etiquette, it suggests all that is finical and superfluous. That's exactly what I was saying about the leftist thinking. Etiquette is about all these little trifles, and it's really unimportant, annoying little things that you have to follow and rules made up. That's what it represents to them. It means a garish embroidery on the big scheme of life, a clog on the forward march of a strong and courageous nation. To such as these, the word etiquette and politeness connote weakness and timidity. How do I say it? Being timid. And that's exactly the point with people online thinking that chivalry means you're like a simp, like just some sort of weak man. And that's not true at all. A true gentleman of honor definitely understands the difference between being weak and timid and politeness and being respectful. Anyway, their notion of a really polite man is a dancing master or a man milliner. What's a man milliner? They were always a dancing man. That's They were always willing to admit that the French were the politest nation in Europe and equally ready to assert that the French were the weakest and least valorous, until the war opened their eyes in amazement. Yet the masters and fighting can go hand in hand, appears in the following anecdote. Yeah, this is a fun little anecdote. It's really, really cute. So let me read this to you guys, but I just want to catch up and see how you are doing. Oh yeah, I forgot about Super Chats and why I'm doing this. Updates on Lady Alchemy. Good to see you stream. Just the update is Weldon's finishing up a book, so as soon as he's done with that, he's going to be all mine. So, I mean, just pretty much working on with him, and we'll get you stuff ASAP. But yeah, Tuesday is art stream, so you can always check in there as well. Anyway, so yeah, thank you for the 2 Canadian bucks. That does remind me, guys, I am trying to do these streams for a reason, and I'm gonna need your help and get the super chats going. There's a Streamlabs link. There is super chats on YouTube. YouTube does take a third of the cut, so if you want to do Streamlabs, that goes directly into a bank account. There's also my PayPal, which is linked, Martina Markota nyc@gmail.com. Have to do a little bit of shilling because this is my life. Until I get some Lady Alchemy bookings, I have to pay rent, so doing all that I can do until I start booking Lady Alchemy again. Yeah, that's right. I need pay pigs because I got my career ruined. I actually had a career. It is not much of a career right now, e-bagging online for a few bucks and being broke, but until I can get my career back that the leftists took from me, I look really forward to not having to e-bag. That would be really, really, really great time. I cannot wait. I look forward to the day where I do not need to e-bag. But until I pick myself back up off the ground, it would really help. Thank you. Anyway, so let's get back to it, shall we? So there is an anecdote about the French and etiquette. Not having a good hair day today. It's kind of everywhere. Okay. In the midst of the war, some French soldiers and some non-French of the Allied forces were receiving their rations in a village. Sorry about the radiator. It is really whistling right now. Does that bother you guys? Can you hear that? Anyway. God, it's really noisy to me. In the midst of the war, some French soldiers and some non-French of the Allied forces were receiving their rations in a village in back of the lines. The non-French fighters belonged to an army that supplied rations plentifully. They grabbed their allotments and stood about hastily eating, uninterrupted by conversation or other concern. The French soldiers took their very meager portions of food, improvised a kind of table on the top of a flat rock, and having laid out the rations, including the small quantity of wine that formed part of the repast, I don't know what that is, sat down in comfort and began their meal amid a chatter of talk. One of the non-French soldiers, all of whom had finished their large supply of food before the French had begun eating, asked sardonically, "Why do you fellows make such a lot of fuss over the little bit of grub they give you to eat?" The Frenchman replied, "Well, we are making war for civilization, are we not? Very well, we are. Therefore, we eat in a civilized way." Fucking bad hair day. But yeah, so that's interesting. So they're going to war for civilization. The least they can do is eat in a civilized way. And that's a really interesting thing to think about, again, in regard to all of this stuff online and politics or whatever. We are out there fighting for civilization. So think of being civilized in everything you do, because we are, doing things for civilization. May as well be civilized, eat civilized, interact with each other in a civilized manner. Unless you want to just live among uncivilized crap, then, sure. Manners maketh man. That is true. Okay. Damn it, I keep... To the French we owe the word etiquette, and it is amusing to discover its origin in the commonplace familiar warning, keep off the grass. It happened in the reign of Louis the 14th, when the gardens of Versailles were being laid out, and the master gardener, an old Scotsman, was sorely tired because his newly seeded lawns were being continually trampled upon. To keep trespassers off, he put up warning signs, or tickets, etiquettes, on which was indicated the path along which to pass. But the courtiers paid no attention to these directions, and so the determined Scot complained to the king in such a convincing manner that his majesty issued an edict commanding everyone at court to keep within the etiquettes. Gradually, the term came to cover all the rules for correct demeanor and deportment in court circles, and thus, through the centuries, it has grown into use to describe the conventions sanctioned for the purpose of smoothing personal contact and developing tact and good manners in social intercourse. With the decline of feudal courts and the rise of empires of industry, such of the ceremony of life was discarded for plain and less formal dealings. Trousers and coats supplanted doublets and toes, and the change in costume was not more extreme than the change in social ideas. The court ceased to be the arbiter of manners, though the aristocracy of the land remained the high exemplar of good breeding. Yet even so courtly and materialistic a mind, I'm going to stop there for a second. I just love the way that they used good breeding in here. Remain the high exemplar of good breeding. Love that shit. That's what I'm talking about. That's what, etiquette and shit is about. It's distinguishing good breeding, good upbringing. Not even establishing, excuse me, now it sounds a bit whatever. But this is what this whole chapter is about, what is best society. And it's not necessarily wealth or whatever. It's about good breeding, being raised, properly, and that can come from anyone, whether it's royalty or the common man. Okay, wait. Sorry, I'm just reading what you guys are saying. Okay. So let me get back into this. Yet even so courtly and materialistic a mind as Lord Chesterfield's acknowledged a connection between manners and morality, of which latter the courts of Europe seem so sparing. In one of the famous letters to his son, he writes, "Moral virtues are the foundation of society in general, and of friendship in particular, but attentions, manners, and graces both adorn and strengthen them." Again, he says, great merit or great failings will make you respected or despised, but trifles, little attentions, mere nothings, either done or reflected, will make you either liked or disliked in the general run of the world. So that's really interesting, and you guys should look up Lord Chesterfield. Let me bring him up for a second. Oh my god, Snowball, you know who that is? I looked him up and I was like, dude, this is awesome. Lord Chesterfield. Let me just... I'm going to have to switch window capture. 1 second. Chesterfield. Alright, it's all zoomed in, but I don't give a shit. I'm not sure if this is the same guy. Hold on. Letters to his son. Oh yeah, see, it's on Gutenberg here too. Again, letters to his son. On the fine art of becoming a man of the world and a gentleman. See, that's the kind of shit that. Oh man. Hold on. This is really annoying. Okay, I guess there. Yeah, just let's check this out. Letters to his son, and others. What was it? What was that other title of it? On the fine art of becoming a man of the world and a gentleman. I mean, that is just fantastic. That is the kind of stuff is like, where is everyone else like talking about this and reading this kind of stuff? Everyone is like, you know, talking about revolt against the modern world or whatever, but just like, or Jordan Peterson is like the only person like saying things like this about becoming a man and being a gentleman and all this stuff, but there's a whole bunch of other universe of people out there that have done stuff like Lord Chesterfield and stuff like that. So I encourage you to look it up if you don't know him, and especially if you are a male, check him out. That sounds fabulous. All right, I have to change this again now. Window capture, change it back to the book. Where is the book? Where is the book? There we go. I'm gonna need to take a break because I just suddenly got a runny nose out of nowhere. I hope I don't have coronavirus. How are you guys doing? Okay, I've been streaming for 43 minutes. Okay, wait. Thank you, Dave Incognito, for the $5. Really appreciate it, guys. Let's get with it. But he said, okay, here, put this towards the Martina needs a better microphone fund. Glad you're on. Well, I have a pretty decent mic. It's just a lot of the times you guys hear the background too much, way too much detail, or me tapping. So I was trying to adjust it with Jack on the other end, telling me how it looks. But if you're saying it sounds like crap, I can adjust it, but I have a decent microphone. Okay. Let's see. Let's get back to it. Sorry, I'm getting the hang of it all. Getting the hang of it, guys. For all the wisdom and brilliancy of his worldly knowledge, perhaps no other writer has done so much to bring disrepute on the manners and graces as Lord Chesterfield, and this it is charged because he debased them so heavily by considering them merely as the machinery of a successful career. To the moralist, the fact that the moral standard of society in Lord Chesterfield's day were very different from those of the present era rather adds to the odium that has become associated with his attitude. His severest critics, however, do concede that he is candid and outspoken, and many admit his social strategy is widely practiced even in these days. So what I think they're saying there is just basically that, like, it's not the greatest example because, like, he did talk about using them for, like, social climbing and how to, like, interact politically and whatever, and that's not really what it's supposed to be about. However, even his critics do say that his strategies and the way that he implemented etiquette does have some, it's a good strategy and people still do that. But the aims of the world in which he moved were routed by the onrush of the ideals of democratic equality, fraternity, and liberty. With the prosperity of the newer shibboleths, the old-time notion of aristocracy, gentility, and high breeding became even more and more a curio to be framed and suitably in gold and kept in the glass case of an art museum. So I think what they are saying there is that modern era came and this whole old-timey notion of aristocracy, gentility, and high breeding became more and more something so rare that it was like glassed in a box and viewed at from a distance in a museum. The crash advance of the industrial age of gold thrust all courts and their sinuous graces aside for the unmistakable ledger balance of the counting hose. This new order of things had been a long time in process when, in the first year of this century, a distinguished English social historian, the Right Honorable G.W.E. Russell, wrote, "Probably in all ages of history men have liked money, but 100 years ago, they did not talk about it in society. Birth, breeding, rank, accomplishments, eminence in literature, eminence in art, eminence in public service, all of these things still count for something in society. But when combined, they are only the dust of the balance when weighed against the all-prevailing power of money. The worship of the golden calf is the characteristic cult of modern society." So this guy, G.W.E. Russell, was complaining about money having a lot of value to people, and this whole worship of the golden calf is the characteristic of modern society. Again, this stuff kind of sounds conservative today, because I would argue that it's actually the left that are worshiping the golden calf, even with money. I mean, everything's all about being woke, and even businesses, and they freaking love money. You know, the whole socialism meme of them having iPhones and drinking their Starbucks and shit, and all that. I don't know why my nose is now running when I'm streaming. I think it's the makeup. That's why my nose is running. I forgot. I don't wear makeup that much anymore because I'm not on camera or performing, but my makeup face powder always made my nose runny. I think I'm a little allergic to it. Let me see how you guys are doing. Maybe I will. Yeah. So basically, that's what they're talking about right now. Is how money is basically the root of all modern society right now. But I might just take a break, maybe right now, because motherfuckers, you are not tipping me. I'm not getting any tips right now. So, boo. Do you see this ticker that I have? I've got a freaking month to make some money. I don't know. I didn't get to prep any commercials. Sorry about it. I was thinking about doing some Metacog commercials. Maybe I'll just throw Metacog up there for a second. Let me do commercial. Sorry, I should have done this before. Medicog TV. Final episodes. Let's do... I am going to put that commercial back up. I'm going to go to the bathroom, do a few things. I was going to read through the super chats, but don't really have any. See you guys in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Bring people in, share the link, whatever. We will run through a little bit more of this intro from Mark Duffy, I think it is, and talking about how terrible money has been in society in regards to morality and etiquette and stuff like that. There's a lot of really interesting stuff to talk about with this etiquette stuff. I hope you are enjoying it so far. See you in a few. Where were we? We were going over the book and we were talking about money, and you guys had some good stuff that you were talking about in the chat. Speaking of money, don't forget to give me some. Links are in the description and shit, or on the screen. Yeah. Would like to see a stream with Ethan Skyver again, and may even boost your sub above 10,000. Yeah, that would be cool. I'm waiting to hit over 10K, and yeah, I'm gonna get back on Ethan once I have some definitive art from Weldon, and I can start really like making moves. But until then, I'm not ready to do anything. All right, let's do this. Oh my god, I suck at this. Hold on. Okay, where are we? The Right Honorable G.W.E. Russell wrote, probably in all ages of history, men have liked money, but 100 years ago they did not talk about it in society. Birth, breeding, rank, accomplishments, eminence in literature, eminence in art, eminence in public service, all of these things still count for something in society. But when combined, they are only as the dust of the balance when weighed against the all-prevailing power of money. The worship of the golden calf is the characteristic cult of modern society. In the Elizabethan age of mighty glory, 300 years before this was said, Ben Jonson had railed against money as a thin membrane of honor, groaning, "How hath all true reputation fallen since money began to have any?" Now, the very fact that the debasing effects of money on the social organism has been so constantly reprehended from scriptural days onward proves the instinctive yearning of mankind for a system of life regulated by good taste, high intelligence, and sound affections. But it remains true that in the succession of great commercial epochs, coincident with the progress of modern science and invention, almost everything can be bought and sold, and so almost everything is rated by the standard of money. Let me catch my breath. So that is interesting. Yeah, okay. You guys are talking about other random shit now in the chat. But that was an interesting little bit about money and how people can be bought and sold for money, pretty much. Everything revolves around money. Yet this standard is precisely not the ultimate test of the Christianity on which we have been plumbing ourselves through the centuries. Still, no one can get along without money, and very few of us get along very well with what we have. At least we think so, because everybody else seems to think that way. We Americans are members of the notion which, materially, is the richest. That's right. Most prosperous. That's right. And most promising in the world. This idea is dinned into our heads continually by foreign observers. And publicly, we own the soft impeachment. It's kind of funny. We own the soft impeachment. Privately, each individual American seems driven with the decision that he must live up to the general conception of the nation as a whole. And I think that is pretty accurate. We do live in a great nation, and I think we do try to live up to it as a whole, because that's what's, dinned into our heads. And he does, but in less strenuous moments, he might profitably ponder the counsel of Gladstone to his countrymen. Let us respect the ancient manners and recollect that if the true soul of chivalry has died among us, with it all that is good in society has died. Let us cherish a sober mind, take for granted that in our best performances there are latent many errors which in their own time will come to light. So, if the true soul of chivalry has died among us, with it all that in good society has died. So that's why it's important, people, okay? America, too, has her ancient manners to remember and to respect, but in the rapid assimilation of new peoples into her economic and social organism, more pressing concerns take up nearly all her time. The perfection of manners by intensive cultivation of good taste, some believe, would be the greatest aid possible to the moralists who are alarmed over the decadence of the younger generation. Good taste may not make men or women really virtuous, but it will often save them from what theologians call occasions of sin. We may note, too, that grossness in manners forms a large portion of the offenses that fanatical reformers foam about. Okay, I really, really like this paragraph. So let's just look at this again for a second. Let me see. Oh my god. Okay. You guys are not even paying attention to what I'm saying. It's fine. But I'm going to go back to this paragraph again because I actually really, really love this. So America, too, has her ancient manners to remember and respect, but in the rapid assimilation of new peoples to her economic and social organism, more pressing concerns take up nearly all her time. The perfection of manners by intensive cultivation of good taste, some believe, would be the greatest aid possible to the moralists who are alarmed over the decadence of the younger generation. Now, think about it in the context of this being published in 1922. So, in 1922, the young generation are like, born in like 1900 or something. Everyone that was like an adult was born in like the 1800s or something. And so you have to think about like that time period. It's not like the time period today. It would be kind of like the opposite. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the Zoomers are just like, yeah, we're the most conservative, like right wing, but I don't know if they're like genuinely generally like what is it, decadent or not. Decadence is kind of like a bad word. It's definitely something more debaucherous. Decadence is like things that are decadent. It's like temptations and stuff like that. So it's like this is like the degeneracy is what we would call. So it's like so to the moralists, people that are like object to the degeneracy, so whatever generation that is, but like people, the greatest aid possible to the people that are complaining about degeneracy is the cultivation of good taste. So think about that a little bit again. So all of us people complaining about degeneracy this, degeneracy that. The best aid possible to counter that is the cultivation of good taste. And I agree with that. And that's what it should be about. It should be about cultivating like good taste, intelligence, like learning things, like understanding, discerning quality versus like crap. Like this is like what we should be focused on, not just like calling each other names and stuff and complaining about degeneracy everywhere and saying everyone's a degenerate. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Dan said, one thing to be said for good cultured taste. I feel it protects the mind, keeps the individual critical of what they accept, separates them from the masses. Yeah, and that's what I think that sentence was really kind of saying, was that like having good taste and cultivating that, like along with manners and everything, is like the distinction between like knowing what is like degenerate or how to like, you know, behave. Anyway. Michael McLaughlin said, these kids with their jazz music and bathtub gin. I mean, totally. In like 1920s, yeah. Okay, let's go back to it a little bit. Just wanted to check in on you guys. Good taste may not make men or women really virtuous. So like these learning, having, cultivating good taste and stuff may not make you like intrinsically virtuous like on its own end, but it will often save them from what theologians call occasions of sin. We may note too that grossness in manners forms a large proportion of the offenses that fanatical reformers foam about. So like a grossness in manners is usually what like are what people like are complaining about with the degeneracy and stuff, like a woman writing, you know, my body, my choice, like on her naked body, and like stopping traffic is like generally not very good manners, you know. So a lot of times when you're offended by something like bullshit that's like degenerate, it's usually because it's lack of good taste and manners. It's pretty accurate. Okay, so this is actually really interesting too. We may note too that grossness and manners form a large proportion of the offenses that fanatical reformers foam about. Besides grossness and manners, the meaner selfishness is at the polar remove from the worldly manners of the old school, according to which, as Dr. Pousset wrote, others were preferred to self, pain was given to no one was neglected, difference was shown to the weak and the aged, and unconscious courtesy extended to all inferiors. Such was the beauty of the old manners, which he felt consisted in acting upon Christian principle, and if in any case it became soulless as apart from Christianity, the beautiful form was there, to which the real life might re-enter. That is lovely. So they're making a distinction about etiquette, and the complete opposite of etiquette is selfishness. And if you just think about selfishness even as a Christian or anything, that is definitely something that is, when someone acts selfish, has a grossness of manners. And to have some manners, you know, pain was given to no one, and difference was shown to the weak and the aged, and I think that's an important distinction. Courtesy was extended to all inferiors. Now, the left don't like these things because you're supposed to treat everyone equally. How dare you say they're inferior? I don't know. I think it's just a lovely way to think and to behave. Let me see what you guys say. Just seeing what you guys are talking about. Okay. All right, you're digging it. You're getting into it. Yeah, and they're saying like, the old school like etiquette was, consisted upon acting upon Christian principles, but if it became soulless as apart from Christianity, the beautiful form was still there, and to which real life might re-enter. So even just like acting upon these principles can instill this like morality like in you. I don't know. As a study of all that is admirable in American manners, and as a guide to behavior in the simplest as well as the most complex requirements of life day by day, whether we are at home or away from it, there can be no happier choice than the present volume, this book. It is conceived in the belief that etiquette in its broader sense means the technique of human conduct under all circumstances in life. Yet all minutiae of correct manners are included, and no detail is too small to be explained, from the selection of visiting card to the mystery of eating corn on the cob. Matters of clothes for men and women are treated with the same fullness of information and accuracy of taste as are questions of the furnishings of their houses and the training of their minds to social intercourse. But there is no exaggeration of the minor details at the expense of the more important spirit of personal conduct and attitude of mind. To dwell on formal trivialities, the author holds, is like measuring the letters of the signboards by the roadside instead of profiting by the directions they offer. She would have us know also that it is not the people who make small technical mistakes or even blunders who are barred from the paths of good society, but those of sham and pretense whose veneered vulgarity at every step tramples the flowers in the gardens of cultivation. To her mind, the structure of etiquette is comparable to that of a house, of which the foundation is ethics and the rest is good taste, correct speech, quiet, unassuming behavior, and proper pride of dignity. So again, this is like just really important stuff, saying about how, yes, every triviality, every detail will be in this book. However, it is not necessarily like making a mistake on these things that is in the book, but it's like being fake and being pretentious, and just like that is like also kind of like against etiquette, and that is trampling on the flowers of the Palace of Versailles and just ignoring the etiquette. And yeah, what was it? To her, the author, to her mind, the structure of etiquette is comparable to that of a house, of which the foundation is ethics and the rest is good taste, correct speech, quiet, unassuming behavior, and proper pride of dignity. And again, talking about like trad stuff or whatever, I think this is great. I think men can learn a lot from this etiquette book, but if anything, my content is for women, and girly artsy stuff, art things, if you're into that, whatever, etiquette. I think men and women can be into it, but it's pretty trad to have a woman have good taste, quiet, unassuming behavior, and proper pride of dignity. Like, that sounds really lovely. To such as entertain the mistaken notion that politeness implies all give and little or no return. See, this is exactly it. This does not mean weak. To such as entertain the mistaken notion that politeness implies all give and little or no return, it is well to recall Coleridge's definition of a gentleman. We feel the gentlemanly character present with us, he said, whenever, under all circumstances of social intercourse, the trivial, not less than the important, though the whole detail of his manners and deportment, and with the ease of his habits, a person shows respect to others in such a way as the same time implies in his own feelings, and habitually an assured anticipation of reciprocal respect from them to himself. In short, the gentlemanly character arises out of the feeling of equality acting as a habit, yet flexible to the varying varieties of rank and modified without being disturbed or suppressed by them. I mean, I know that's a handful, but it's actually really interesting because it's totally kind of how I feel like I function in situations, because I've noticed, especially online, people saying that, like, respect is earned, not given. And, like, it just makes me wonder, like, do people really go around walking around life, like, not respecting anyone unless they, like, feel like they deserve respect? Like, that's a bit fucked up, like, I go around giving general, like, respect as a decent human being, back and forth, respect as a an old person, respect as a child, respect as someone that I work with, respect for an elder or a family member, or to a politician, or, like, the varying degrees is what they're talking about, being able to modify without being disturbed, and knowing how to, give respect to everyone, but without it being, like, just all out respect and being trampled on. Like, of course, like, then you, again, do the varying degrees of respect of, like, okay, like, less respect there, but to just go around not respecting anyone until, like, you prove yourself to this person is, like, kind of crazy. Like, I don't think I agree with that idea. Let me see. Anyway. Yeah, I get that some people aren't worthy of respect, but that's usually, again, until they, like, show you that. Like, are you just walking around not respecting anyone? You go to the grocery store and the person that, you exchange money with, you're just like, fuck you, I don't respect you at all. I mean, like, you're stuck on a train car with people and something happens and you all have to interact with each other. You don't respect anyone. Like, I respect people up until the point where I'm just like, okay, they're being, crazy about this or that. But I give respect to people. I give respect to my landlord. I give respect to people I work with. Anyway, let's continue here. Let's see, where are we at? Person shows respect to others in such a way that at the same time, in short, the gentlemanly character arises out of the feeling of equality, acting as a habit, yet flexible to the varying varieties of rank and modified without being disturbed or surpassed by them. Definitions of a gentleman are numerous and some of them famous, but we do not find such copiousness for choice and definition of a lady. Perhaps it has been understood all along that the admirable and just characteristics of a gentleman should of necessity be those of a lady, and with the charm of womanhood combined. So, and in these days with the added responsibility of the vote. So again, perhaps it has been understood all along that the admirable and just characteristics of a gentleman should of necessity be those also of a lady, with the charm of womanhood combined, and in these days with the added responsibility of the vote. So whatever a gentleman has and those characteristics, a woman is also supposed to have, on top of it, having charm of womanhood mixed in there. And as of late, according to this publication, the added responsibility of the vote, which is what we also have now. Besides the significance of this volume as in indubitable authority on manners, it should be pointed out that as a social document, it is without... Hold on a second. I don't know if you can hear that. Besides the significance of this volume as in indubitable authority on matters, it should be pointed out that as a social document, it is without precedent in American literature. In order that we may better realize the behavior environment of well-bred people, the distinguished author has introduced actual persons and places in fictional guise. They are the persons and the places of her own world, and whether we can or cannot generate the incognito of the worldlies, the Gildings, the old names, and the others of no importance. Fictionally, they are real enough for us to be understood, for us to be interested and instructed in their way of living. That they happen to move in what is known as society is incidental, for as the author declares at the very outset, best society is not a fellowship of the wealthy, nor does it seek to exclude those who are not of exalted birth, but it is an association of gentlefolk, of which good form in speech, charm of manner, acknowledge of the social anonymties, and instinctive consideration for the feelings of others are the credentials by which society the world over recognizes its chosen members. So again, this isn't just like something that is like, people that are exalted at birth, but it's a association of gentlefolk, people that have manners and an instinctive consideration for the feelings of others. That is the only credential that this like elite group of people recognize its members. And I think that's really lovely. It's like you can be anybody, but you are part of this like beautiful interaction of people that when you can live by these graces. The immediate fact is that the characters of this book are thoroughbred Americans, representative of various sections of the country, and free from the slightest tinge of snobbery. Not all of them are even well-to-do in the post-war sense, and their devices of economy and household outlay, dress, and entertainment are a revelation in the science of ways and means. There are parents, children, relatives, and friends all passing before us in the pageant of life from the cradle to the grave. No circumstance from an introduction to a wedding is overlooked in this panorama, and the spectator has beside him a cicerone in the person of the author who clears every doubt of the answer, every question. In course, the conviction grows upon him that etiquette is no flummery of posers aping the manners of their betters, nor a code of snobs who divide their time between licking the boots of those above them and kicking those below, but a system of rules of conduct based on respect of self coupled with respect of others. Meanwhile, to guard against conceit in his new book, he may add moments to recall Ben Jonson's lines. Nor stand so much on your generosity, which is an airy and mere borrowed thing from dead men's dust and bones, and none of yours except you make or hold it. I don't know about that quote, but yeah, it isn't just like posers like aping the manners or a code of snobs. I hate people that lick bootstraps of people above them and kick at people below them. It's a rules of conduct about respect of yourself and others. Anyway, let's see what you guys are talking about. Oh my god, you guys aren't even paying attention to what I'm saying. Fine. Moving on. How long have we been on here? 1 hour and 25 minutes, guys. This is really bad. Is everyone watching Super Bowl or something? Because why is this sucking so hard for me? My Streamlabs hasn't even been working. Have you guys been getting the alerts? What the fuck? Alright, back to the book. Alright, where are we at here? What is best society? Society is an ambiguous term. It may mean much or nothing. Every human being, unless dwelling alone in a cave, is a member of society of one sort or another, and therefore it is well to define what is to be understood by the term best society and why it is authorized and why its authority is recognized. Best society abroad is always the oldest aristocracy, composed not so much of persons of title, which may be new, as of those families and communities which... Can you guys hear this whistling? This radiator is really whistling. I can't. Just give it a second. Can you hear that? Oh my god. Can you still hear it? Well, we're in New York City right now, so welcome to a whistling radiator and honking outside. She's like, holy fuck, how do you live in New York City? It's not even that bad. It's just... Hold on, let me see if I can hear the whistling on camera. I'm going to mute you for a second. I don't know, I can't hear it when I'm playing it back, but this shit is loud in person. Oh my god, it's so loud. It's always something. Oh, and someone was saying I was mumbling. I'm sorry about that. I kind of was when I played that back. In fact, I hate reading out loud. Okay. I think it stopped whistling. It's coming back. I should try to be more expressive. When I read scripts and stuff, I'm really expressive, and Jay absolutely loves it. But I'm trying to be all like professional and not be so expressive when I read this stuff that it's kind of coming across worse. Anyway, our own best society. So as opposed to Europe, where they have royalty and stuff, which is considered their best society, in America, it is represented by social groups, which have had since This is America widest rather than longest association with old world cultivation. Cultivation is always the basic attribute of best society, much as we hear in this country of an aristocracy of wealth. I like that cultivation is always the basic attribute of best society. And that's kind of what it is that I've been harping on, is that we have to cultivate. That's it. That is such a good word. We have to cultivate, and that's why it's all about harnessing this good taste through etiquette and some art history on Tuesdays, and cultivation. That's what we should be doing, guys. To the general public, a long purse is synonymous with high position. So what they're saying is a long purse, someone with a lot of money. To the general public, someone with a lot of money is synonymous with high position. A theory dear to the heart of the yellow press and eagerly fostered in the posthumous social functions of screen drama. It is true that best society is comparatively rich. It is true that the hostess of great wealth who constantly and lavishly entertains will shine, at least to the readers of the press, more brilliantly than her less affluent sister. Yet the latter, through her quality of birth, her poise, her inimitable distinction, is often the jewel of deeper water in the social crown of her time. Man, the way that they write things. The most advertised commodity is not always intrinsically the best. That is true. The most advertised commodity is not always intrinsically the best, but is sometimes merely the product of a company with plenty of money to spend on advertising. In the same way, money brings certain people before the public. Sometimes they are persons of quality, quite as often the so-called society leaders or social influencers featured in the public press do not belong to good society at all, in spite of their many published photographs and the energies of their press agents. Or possibly they do belong to smart society, but if too much advertised instead of being the queens they seem, they might more accurately be classified as the court jesters of today. So I love that. Let's break this down for a second. The most advertised commodity is not always intrinsically the best, but is sometimes merely the product of a company with plenty of money to spend on advertising. The same way, money brings people before the public. Sometimes they are persons of quality, quite often. The so-called society leaders featured in the public press do not belong to good society at all. Oh my God, do I know a few people that get a ton of press but are not good society at all. Handcuffing yourself to buildings and some crazy shit, getting yourself arrested on purpose. Yeah, you get some press, but that is not good society. In spite of their many published photographs and the energies of their press agents. Or possibly they do belong to smart society, but if too much advertised instead of being the queens they seem, they might more accurately be classified as the court jesters of today. I would classify most of these types, joy villas, whatever, as the court jesters, for sure. Handcuffing yourself for press attention would be a court gesture. For sure. And I just love how in this context they use the word queens, because they were like, they're talking about it as like, because in Europe high society is royalty, so it's like a literal queen that they're talking about, but it totally relates right now because that's the modern like young version when people are like, yes, queen or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're trying to like be this queen, but you're not what you seem. You're actually this court jester. I love it. It's actually kind of funny. Oh my God. Are you guys like freaking out over this radiator? Okay. Where are we at? The imitation and the genuine. I love this bit. Okay, New York, more than any city in the world, unless it be Paris, loves to be amused, thrilled, and surprised all at the same time, and will accept with outstretched hand anyone who can perform this outstanding feat. Do not underestimate the ability that can achieve it. A scintillating wit, an arresting originality, a talent for entertaining that amounts to genius. Me. And gold poured literally like rain are the least requirements. Puritan America, on the other hand, demanding as a ticket of admission to her best society the qualifications of birth, manners, and cultivation, clasped her hands tight across her slim trim waist and announced severely that New York's best is, in her opinion, very bad indeed. But this is because Puritan America, as well as the general public, mistake the gesture for the queen. As a matter of fact, best society is not at all like a court with an especial queen or king, nor is it confined to any place or group, but might better be described as an unlimited brotherhood which spreads over the entire surface of the globe, the members of which are invariably people of cultivation and worldly knowledge, who have not only perfect manners, but a perfect manner. Manners are made up of trivialities of deportments which can be easily learned if one does not happen to know them. Manner is personality, the outward manifestation of one's innate character and attitude towards life. A gentleman, for instance, will never be ostentatious or overbearing any more than he will ever be servile, because these attributes never animate the impulses of a well-bred person. Love that bit so much. So now think about this with this whole simp thing. It is bad to be a simp. That is not good manners either. But it is also good to be respectful. But this is actually kind of taking a dig. A gentleman, for instance, will never be ostentatious or overbearing any more than he will ever be servile. So, like, you're not super overbearing or ostentatious, neither are you servile, because these attributes never animate the impulses of a well-bred person. Okay, so that is fantastic. I love that. A man whose manner suggests the grotesque is invariably a person of imitation rather than of real position. Etiquette must, if it is to be more than trifling use, include ethics as well as manners. Certainly what one is of far greater importance than what one appears to be. Some would beg to differ. A knowledge of etiquette is, of course, essential to one's decent behavior, just as clothing is essential to one's decent appearance, and precisely as one wears the latter without being self-conscious of having on shoes or perhaps gloves, one who has good manners is equally unself-conscious in the observance of etiquette, the precepts of which must be so thoroughly absorbed to make their observance a matter of instinct rather than of conscious obedience. So basically, like, you want to, like, have it, these gestures, these, like, this rule, this bounds of etiquette is just so innately understood that you don't have to, like, think about it that much. It's just like you act automatically according to things. So it's not about having to think about it too much. It's just like it's unconscious. You know how to function. Thus, best society is not a fellowship of the wealthy, nor does it seek to exclude those who are not of exalted birth, but it is an association of gentle folk, of which good form in speech, charm of manner, knowledge of social amenities, and instinctive consideration for the feelings of others are the credentials by which society the world over recognizes its chosen members. So that's something we don't think about often. I know it's been fun trolling and stuff, but I mean, you know, it is important to think about the feelings of others because people don't really do that often. And I think that's a really bad formula. All right, you guys are paying attention. Cool. Don't forget to send some Streamlabs or Super Chats or what have yous. You know, feel free to send it my way. I guess we'll keep going. We're at an hour and 40 minutes, so another 20 minutes. I'll give this a go. I hope that whistling is not that bad. Okay, so now let's get into the actual stuff. And I think that was a lot of really good theory on alchemy and discussion. If you guys have any points to make about it, any interesting things, I love how that whole chapter on the imitation and the genuine and what is best society. I think it's really, really interesting stuff. And so let's just get into things. So chapter 2 is introductions. The correct form. The word present is preferable on formal occasions to the word introduce. On formal occasions, neither word is expressed, although understood, as will be shown below. The correct formal introduction is, Mrs. Jones, may I present Mr. Smith? Or, Mr. Distinguished, may I present Mr. Young? The younger person is always presented to the older, more distinguished. So, I just love all of these, we'll call them trifles or trivialities, but it does make sense how they give these different distinctions. And I think that this way of understanding etiquette and those different distinctions, like how they expressed in the introduction, is this like strange way of interacting where there is everything on a level. And I think it's really anti-leftist because they kind of think it should be flat across the board, like everyone should have the same respect or something. But sometimes you do give more respect to, in this case, the young person is always presented to the older, more distinguished. So it's like, that's judging people. And like the left ate that shit. Like, so the young person is always presented to the older person, but a gentleman is always presented to a lady. Again, these are distinct things that the left really would struggle with, because you can't assume anyone's gender, so how are you going to present people? And this gives a respect to the woman, because just like the other thing, the younger person is presented to the older, more distinguished. That's kind of how it is. It's like, showing someone, introducing someone young to like a really distinguished person. It's kind of like showing off, like, this is someone distinguishable you like that you should meet. It's like presenting them. And in this case, a gentleman is always presented to a lady. So that is showing respect of putting the woman above the man. And I'm not saying that, oh my God, don't freak out, men's rights people, don't freak out. It's not saying that the woman is above the man, but it's this selfless honor type of thing where a man is, giving respect. So it's like the woman is automatically getting that respect. And I think it's a lovely relationship. And feminists have always been fighting this, so don't become like the feminists. I think it's a really lovely distinction that shows respect. Gentleman is always presented to a lady, even though he is an old gentleman of great distinction, and the lady a mere slip of a girl. So it doesn't even matter that the more distinguished person is in a higher position. The lady is still considered, to be introduced. No lady is ever, except to the President of the United States, a cardinal, or a reigning sovereign, presented to a man. The correct introduction of either a man or woman to the President is, Mr. President, I have the honor to present Mrs. Jones of Chicago. Okay, so that's interesting. You present people to a more distinguished person, however, you always present people to a lady, except if it's the President of the United States, a cardinal, or a reigning sovereign. To a cardinal, it is, Your Eminence, may I present Mrs. Jones? To a king, much formality of presenting names on list is gone through beforehand. At the actual presentation, an accepted name is repeated from functionary to equerry, and nothing is said to the king or queen except Mrs. Jones. What? I feel like Jack would find this interesting. Is Jack in the chat? What's going on here? Jack, are you in here? Oh shit, I lost the book. Hold on. You guys are awfully quiet. I don't think you care. I think this is fascinating. Let's go back to this. So, but Foreign ambassadors presented. Mr. Ambassador, may I present you Mrs. Jones? Very few people in polite society are introduced by their formal titles. A hostess says, Mrs. Jones, may I present the Duke of over there, or Lord Blank. Never His Grace or His Lordship. The Honorable is merely Mr. Lordson or Mr. Hold Office. A doctor, a judge, a bishop are addressed and introduced by their titles. The clergy are usually Mr. unless they formally hold the title of doctor or dean or canon. A Catholic priest is Father Kelly. A senator is always introduced as senator, whether he is still in office or not. Didn't know that. But the President of the United States, once he is out of office, is merely Mr. and not ex-president. So these are all like really interesting things that I feel like we don't even think about. And I know it is quite cumbersome to kind of think about all of these things, but the more you absorb it, like they say in the introduction, the more it's just like natural to you. Just like anything else that you learn, the more it can make more sense over time, and you just like remember these things. But pretty much you know, the introductions, we sorted that out, who gets introduced to whom. But as far as titles go, they do have another chapter and it goes deeper into titles, but yeah, as far as introductions go, very few people in polite society are introduced by their formal titles. So it's Duke, a Lord, never His Grace or His Lordship. A doctor, a judge, a bishop are addressed and introduced by their titles. Oh, it does work.
Martina, Super Bowl.
Super Bowl. Wait, hold on. I have to fix that. Streamlabs goes up top. Okay. You know, Rainbow, is that your goodbye that you're watching the Super Bowl? Is that what's happening here? Oh, Martina greater than Super Bowl. Yeah, I agree. Who watches that shit? May I present Mr. Soros? How about no? I am technically Laird Jack Buckby. I own a square foot of land in Scotland. Yeah, I think it's quite fascinating. That was my British accent. Let's get back to it. The prevailing introduction and inflection. Okay, so in the briefer form of introduction commonly used, right, so that whole thing, like, may I present to you, like, blah, blah, blah. There's a briefer form, which basically you just say the people's two names, but you say them with an inflection so that you know when you are introducing someone to the other person. So it would be like Mrs. Worldly, Mrs. Norman. So I don't know if you guys can hear that inflection and what was going on, but it's Mrs. Worldly, Mrs. Norman. So that's introducing Mrs. Worldly to Mrs. Norman. If the two names are said in the same tone of voice, it is not apparent who's introduced to whom, but by accentuating the more important person's name, it can be made as clear as though the words "may I present" had been used. The more important name is said with a slightly rising inflection, the second as a mere statement of fact. For instance, I suppose you say, "Are you there?" and then "It is raining." Use the same inflection exactly and say, "Mrs. Worldly, Mrs. Younger." "Are you there?" "It is raining." "Mrs. Worldly, Mrs. Younger." So, yeah, That's an interesting thing. I don't know if you guys knew about this whole tone and inflection thing happening. So when you are out and about and you can't remember that whole thing about may I present like whatever, blah, 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 you know, you're out in an event and you're introducing someone and you can do it that way. The unmarried lady is presented to the married one. Oh my God, these trivialities I love. I just think they're so interesting. Like, I forget this bit. I never think about this. The unmarried lady is presented to the married one unless the latter is very much the younger. As a matter of fact, in introducing two ladies to each other or one gentleman to another, no distinction is made. Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Norman. Mr. Brown, Mr. Green. The inflection is... Oh, see, I was doing the other inflection. Sorry. So the inflection is, I think it's going to rain. Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Norman. Huh. A man is also often introduced Mrs. Worldly, Mrs. Norman. But to a very distinguished man, a mother would say, Mr. Edison, my daughter Mary. To a very young man, however, she should say, Mr. Struthers, have you met my daughter? If the daughter is married, she should have added, my daughter, Mrs. Marlington. The daughter's name is omitted because it is extremely bad taste, except in the South, to call her daughter Miss Mary to anyone but a servant. Ooh, shit, servants. And on the other hand, she should not present a young man to Mary. The young man can easily find out her name afterward. Oh my God, this is like so interesting in this whole like you're trying to be trad sense. Like it is so interesting. And again, you can see how leftists would hate this kind of stuff. So again, if you guys are interested in these little trifles and these little details, the link is in the description, and I should have the links plastered everywhere. I'll be following this guide pretty much the whole time, but it's Emily Post's a book on etiquette, published in 1922, and it's copyright free on the Gutenberg.org free press. And just like starting to understand these little trifles, I think are really important for cultivation in our society. So again, to a young man, however, one should say, Mr. Struthers, have you met my daughter? If the daughter is married, she should have added, my daughter, Mrs. Smarlington. Terrible names. The daughter's name is omitted because it is extremely bad taste, except in the South, to call her daughter Miss Mary to anyone but a servant. And on the other hand, she should not present a young man to Mary. The young man can easily find out her name afterward. Other forms of introduction. Other permissible forms of introductions are Mrs. Jones, do you know Mrs. Norman? Or Mrs. Jones, do you know Mrs. Robinson? Don't you? On no account say, do you not? Best Society always says, don't you? I love that. So you always say, don't you? And never say, do you not? Best Society never says, do you not? I love it. Oh my God, you guys are talking about the NFL. Oh my God, Jay. Mr. Rainbow, may I introduce to you Mrs. Patty. So funny. Oh, and Rainbow, by the way, thank you for the $40. Finally, something. Thank you. Martina is greater than the Super Bowl. Who even watches that? No offense, anyone. All right, let's get back to the introductions. Or Mrs. Robinson, have you met Mr. Jones? Yeah, that's always fine. Have you met Mr. Jones? Mrs. Jones, do you know my mother? Or this is my daughter Ellen, Mrs. Jones. All of these are good form, whether gentlemen are introduced to ladies, ladies to ladies, or gentlemen to gentlemen. In introducing a gentleman to a lady, you may ask Mr. Smith if he has met Mrs. Jones, but you must not ask if Mrs. Jones has met Mr. Smith. Wow, I love that. In introducing a gentleman to a lady, you may ask Mr. Smith if he has met Mrs. Jones, but you must not ask Mrs. Jones if she has met Mr. Smith. Forms of introductions to avoid. Do not say, Mr. Jones, shake hands with Mr. Smith. Oh, it's terrible. Telling someone to shake hands with someone. It's terrible. Or, Mrs. Jones, I want to make you acquainted with Mr. Smith. Never say make you acquainted with, and do not, in introducing one person to another, call one of them my friend. You can say my aunt or my sister or my cousin, but do not pick out a particular person as my friend. Is not only bad style, unless you have only one friend, bad manners, as it implies Mrs. Smith is my friend and you are a stranger. So yeah, the whole make you acquainted with is actually way too, like, no, that's too much. Like, it's actually kind of weird. And don't call someone my friend. I do tend to use it kind of like my aunt, or my sister, or just giving any title. Usually what you want to do, and I think they'll get into it a little bit later, is when you introduce someone, you generally say what both of them, what your relationship to both of them is, in which case I'll say, meet Mr. Smith, my friend from university or something, and this is Ivana, my sister, so that they both understand the relationship to you and it's not like ambiguous. That's like the proper thing to do. So I will say my friend in that manner, and I don't really think it's that big of a deal. So that's how I know you. That's how I know you. But according to this, it says that it's bad taste because it implies that someone isn't your friend or something. You may very properly say to Mr. Smith, I want you to meet Mrs. Jones, but it is not a form of introduction, nor is it to be said in Mrs. Jones' hearing. Okay, so hold on a second again. You may very properly say to Mr. Smith, I want you to meet Mrs. Jones, but it is not to a form of introduction, nor is it to be said in when she can hear you. Upon leading Mr. Smith to Mrs. Jones, you say, Mrs. Jones, may I present Mr. Smith, or Mrs. Jones, Mr. Smith. Under no circumstances whatsoever say, Mr. Smith, meet Mrs. Jones, or Mrs. Jones, meet Mr. Smith. Either wording is equally preposterous. So I think it's the meat. It's the meat in that. Right. So their point is that, like, you can say to someone like, hey, I want you to meet my friends, like, whatever, like, that's cool, but just, like, don't say it within earshot of the person you're trying to introduce. And when you introduce them, don't say, like, oh, so-and-so meet so-and-so. Like, it's in Emily Post wording, preposterous. Do not repeat Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones. To say each name once is quite enough. So you don't have to go like both ways with it. Most people of good taste very much dislike being asked their names. To say, what's your name, is always abrupt and unflattering. If you want to know with whom you have been talking, you can generally find a third person later and ask, who was that lady with the gray feather in her hat? Or next time you see her, you can say, how do you do, Mrs. Calling her by name. But what if you don't know their name? If you want to know who you've been talking to, you can generally find a third person, ask who's that I was talking to. And the next time you see her, you can say, how do you do? And then their name. When to shake hands. When gentlemen are introduced to each other, they always shake hands. When a gentleman is introduced to a lady, she sometimes puts her hand out, especially if she is someone she has long heard about from common friends. But to an entire stranger, she generally merely bows her head slightly and says, how do you do? Love that. So A lady generally doesn't shake hands. She bows her head and says, "How do you do?" Which I love because I do think at times, oh my God, it scared me. Fuck. Oh.
Chivalry is not dead.
No, no. Why didn't that come around the top? Let me go back to who was that? What happened? Where did that go? I don't see it. Maybe it was in Streamlabs or something. Hold on. Oh yeah, it was Streamlabs. Cool. Chivalry is not dead. Freelancer donated $10. Thank you so much. Yes. That's what I'm talking about. Making this etiquette shit happen. And chivalry. Let's get back to it. Okay. I don't know if you guys are following all that. Let's see what you guys are saying. Okay, sorry, I was just checking in on you guys. I need someone to help me and like tell me if there's like something to address in the chat. When to shake hands. So basically, a woman never shakes hands. She may extend her hand out, you know, and that can be like a thing. But if she doesn't have to. She can just generally. Oh, they say she can extend her hand if it's someone that she's been meaning to meet through a friend or whatever. It's like this, you know, whole thing. She's heard about them for a while. But if it's just like a general stranger, that a nod and a how do you do is just fine. Strictly speaking, it is always her place to offer her hand or not as she chooses. But if he puts his hand out, it is rude on her part to ignore it. Nothing could be more ill-bred than to treat curtly any overture made in spontaneous friendliness. No thoroughbred lady would ever refuse to shake hands, any hand that is honorable, not even the hand of a heaver at the risk of her fresh white glove. Sorry, I'm so bad at reading aloud. I'm going to read it over again because I absolutely love this point to make. Yeah, so I guess generally the girl can just nod and say how do you do, but and it's really her job to like put her hand out if she wants to. But if the guy does put his hand out, it's rude not to shake it because it's rude on her part to ignore it. Nothing could be more ill-bred than to treat any overture made in spontaneous friendliness, push it away. No thoroughbred lady would ever refuse to shake any hand that is honorable, not even the hand of a coal heaver at the risk of her fresh white glove. Those who have been drawn into a conversation do not usually shake hands on parting, but there is no fixed rule. A lady sometimes shakes hand after talking with a casual stranger. At other times, she does not offer a hand on parting from one who has been punctiliously presented to her. She may find the former sympathetic and the latter very much the contrary. Very few rules of etiquette are inelastic, and none more so than the acceptance or rejection of the strangers you meet. There is a wide distance between rudeness and reserve. And see, this is also something that I think is lost on the feminists and the whole, like, when they were freaking out about men on the street saying, like, hello. Like, saying hello to a stranger on the street was considered, like, harassment. And I think there's a difference between being reserved and being rude. You can be courteously polite and at the same time extremely aloof to a stranger who does not appeal to you. I do it all the time. Or you can be welcomely friendly to another whom you like on sight. Individual temperament has also to be taken into consideration. One person is naturally austere, another genial. The latter shakes hands far more often than the former. As already said, it is unforgivingly rude to refuse a proffered hand, but it is rarely necessary to offer your hand if you prefer not to. What to say when introduced. Best Society has only one phrase in acknowledgement of an introduction. How do you do? It literally accepts no other. When Mr. Batchelor says, Mrs. Wordley, may I present Mrs. Struthers? Mrs. Wordley says, how do you do? Struthers bows and says nothing. To sweetly echo Mrs. Struthers, he says nothing, but to sweetly echo Mrs. Struthers with a rising inflection on others. Thurs. Struthers? Like, yeah, so someone's like, oh, how may I introduce to you, who is it? Mr. Struthers. And then the other person says, how do you do? And they nod and say their name with a rising inflection. It is not, oh wait, I guess it says it's not good form. Hold up. Let's read this again. What to say when introduced. Best Society has only one phrase, acknowledgement, how do you do? It literally accepts no other. When Mr. Batchelor says, Mrs. Wordley, may I present Mr. Struthers? Mrs. Wordley says, how do you do? Struthers bows and says nothing. So it's just a bow and say nothing. To sweetly echo Mr. Struthers with a rising inflection on others is not good form. Okay, take that back. So you don't do that. Saccharine chirping should be clasped with crooked little fingers and high handshaking and other affectations. All affectations are bad form. Oh shit. That just called them out. So no need to chirp under your breath their name when you meet them. You can just nod, bow, whatever. And it's classified among other things like crooked little fingers, high handshaking, and other affectations. All affectations are bad form. Persons of position do not say charmed or pleased to meet you, etc., but often the first remark is the beginning of a conversation. For instance, wait, hold on, I love that. I just have to take that back. So when you're being introduced to someone, you don't say charmed or pleased to meet you. You just meet them and you nod. See, it's like, oh fuck, my neck. I think it's that like neck, slouchy neck thing that we're gonna have, that whole like thing, because being on the computer makes my upper neck hurt. Spine. You guys are making fun of my Tourette's. Making etiquette shit happen. Mrs. Markota, may I introduce to you Officer Tourette's? Handshaking the way you did that. Retarded. Let's see. Where are we at? Sorry. Alright guys, we are, that is true, Rainbow. Good posture is good etiquette. We are at the 2-hour mark, so gonna want to wrap it up soon unless people are sending the super chats, but in the meantime, wait, what is happening? In the meantime, I'll see how we can finish off here. How much do we have here? What to say when introduced? Oh god, there's a lot. Damn, didn't get through everything. There is a lot. We will go through it next time. But let's see. We'll just do a few more. Yeah, but don't say shit. Just, you don't need all this shit to say. Charmed, pleased to meet you, back and forth politeness, like nonstop, blah blah blah. Actually, the better etiquette is to just move along into the conversation. So when you're introduced, you just have a bow, shake their hand, whatever, and then you instantly get into the conversation. Young Struthers is presented to Mrs. Worldly. She smiles and perhaps says, I hear that you are going to be in New York all winter. Struthers answers, yes, I am at Columbia Law School, etc. Or since he is much younger than she, he might answer, yes, Mrs. Worldly, especially if his answer would otherwise be curt yes or no. Otherwise, he does not continue repeating her name. You just jump right into the conversation, taking leave of one you have just met. After an introduction, when you have talked for some time to a stranger whom you have found agreeable, love that, and you then take leave, you say, goodbye, I am very glad to have met you, or goodbye, I hope I shall see you again soon, or sometime. The other person answers thank you, or perhaps adds, I hope so too. Usually thank you is all that is necessary. In taking leave of a group of strangers, it makes no difference whether you have been introduced to them or merely included in their conversation. You bow goodbye to anyone who happens to be looking at you, but you do not attempt to attract the attention of those who are unaware that you are turning away. So this point is like, yeah, if you're in conversation with someone and you're leaving, you're like, oh, bye, it was nice talking to you, whatever, like, hope to see you again, like typical bullshit. And then, but if you're like talking to a group of people, it's like awkward when people are trying to say like goodbye a million times and shake your hand a million times when they're leaving, or like it's like awkward because you kind of just briefly met someone but you have no idea who they are. They just like, it's kind of like it's overly awkward trying to be overly polite. So just kind of in that situation, you met a group of people, you don't really know everyone you've been talking to, this person, they were in casual conversation with a group of us. You just bow and say goodbye, maybe a little wave, and get out of there. You don't have to like awkwardly individually say bye to people and shake their hand. It's so annoying. And get people attention when they weren't even noticing that you were leaving. Unnecessary. Introducing one person to a group. This is never done on formal occasions when a great many persons are present. At a small luncheon, for instance, a hostess always introduces her guests to one another. Let us suppose you are the hostess. Your position is not necessarily near, but it is towards the door. Mrs. King is sitting quite close to you. Mrs. Lawrence is also near. Miss Robinson and Miss Brown are much farther away. Mrs. Jones enters. You go a few steps forward and shake hands with her, and then stand aside, as it was only for a second, only to see if Mrs. Jones goes to speak to anyone else. If she appears apparently knows no one, you say, okay, so basically what's happening, you are greeting Mrs. Jones and you're seeing she doesn't really know anyone and there's like a group of people. Mrs. King, do you know Mrs. Jones? Mrs. King, being close at hand, usually but not necessarily, rises, shakes hands with Mrs. Jones and sit down again. If Mrs. King is an elderly lady and Mrs. Jones a young one, Mrs. King merely extends her hand and does not rise. I'm just trying to digest that. What's going on here? Hold on a second. So you're introducing to a group of people. Let us suppose you're a hostess. Your position is not necessarily near, but is towards the door. I don't really get that one. What do you guys think? What's happening here? So I'm right here. So I'm trying to explain this like position, but it's like the reason why they're saying it is just give you a general idea of a situation so you can gauge like in your own situation when something like that's happening. So I'm trying to like get the picture of what she's explaining by like being near someone and then you stand aside and look to see if Mrs. Jones goes to speak to anyone. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay, so basically you entered and you greeted your guest, and then you step aside and you see that like Mrs. Jones isn't speaking to anyone. And if she doesn't know anyone, you can say, oh, do you know Mr. Jones? Yeah, and then when people, okay, so if you're seated at a table, right. So this is like also, if you're seated at a table and you introduce someone, at the table, they do stand up and shake their hands. But I guess what they're saying is that if it's an old lady, like, she doesn't have to get up. I think old lady doesn't have to get up either when a guy enters like a table and is being introduced, she doesn't have to get up, but a guy always gets up for a lady or some shit. Yeah, I don't know. It gets confusing, and I realize I haven't eaten all day, so I'm fucking hungry. I'm getting out of here. Dan said, so these rules of etiquette are the result of an organic evolution, and modern culture is obviously a devolution. One wonders what etiquette would look like now if still evolving in a positive way. Yeah, that's exactly what I think, and I think that that is like exactly right. We need to focus on this kind of stuff a bit more, and it is something that like evolved over time, and it is a really, really great mechanism for social cohesion that we already have, that we've established over time and time, and works really, really well. But it's the left and feminists that have destroyed that, and what I fear, the opposite of feminism on the right, also working to destroy this concept. So I don't know. I don't agree, but anyway, guys, it was really fun. Didn't get through as much as I wanted to, which is what I expected. I knew that I would just like chit chat and try to like rehash some sentences and kind of think about them a little bit more, and that's, you know, whatever. It's all good. So we'll finish up some of the introductions and greetings and stuff like that next week. But tomorrow we will kind of touch base about this stuff in general. So if you guys like think about what we talked about so far, it's going to kind of apply tomorrow, because we're going to talk about the political Twitter sphere kind of stuff, talk about simps and chivalry and the purpose of all this stuff. So come by tomorrow. I'm going to try to get going at 4 p.m. I was super late today, but I'm trying. I'm really, really trying. Alright, guys. Love ya. Bye.